Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Our topic for today is positive rods, divided into spore forming and non-spore forming. The spore forming includes the Bacillus and Clostridium species, whereas the non-spore forming include Corynebacterium, diphtheria, and Listeria monocytogenes. Another differentiating features between this organism is that the spore forming ones are comparatively longer and more deeply staining, whereas non-spore forming organisms are club-shaped and comparatively smaller and comparatively lighter staining, but they characteristically appear V-shaped or L-shaped. Now, another differentiating feature between these organisms is that all are aerobic. That means they need oxygen to grow, except for Clostridium species, meaning that they can grow in even dead tissues. Now, the last differentiating features between all of these organisms combined together is that all of these produce exotoxins, like Bacillus will produce it, Corynebacterium, Clostridium, except for Listeria monocytogen, which does not produce any exotoxin. It consists upon 4 species: Clostridium tetani, which causes tetanus; Clostridium botulinum, which causes flaccid paralysis; Clostridium perfringens, which causes gas gangrene; and Clostridium difficile, which causes gastrointestinal upset when you take a lot of antibiotics. As you know, this is an anaerobe, meaning that it does not require any oxygen for its growth, and along that it is spore forming. Now, moving on to our topic, Clostridium tetani. Quite simple. The transmission is by many routes. One of this includes a common road traffic accident. Whenever a patient has a road traffic accident and wham, this boy goes flying, he would suffer from multiple abrasions. Now, multiple abrasions give a point of entry for this organism. Supposedly, if it is orange, which is present in soil, this would get into that point of entry. That would be the wound. Now, the wound is more favorable growth because it consists upon dead tissue. So, as you know, that this organism has the ability to grow in oxygen deficient environment. So, this is a very important source. Another important source for this organism to grow is when umbilical cord of the babies is being resected by very aseptic techniques, which includes instruments. So this organism still has the ability to go into the blood and help and then affect the central nervous system. Another common example of this is seen in drug addicts. Drug addicts now have the ability to inject their drug under the skin for maximum effect by skin popping techniques. So when the skin is being popped, this again provides a sufficient amount of area for the organism to go in, as that respective area is a very blood deficient. So hence it can easily, or the spores can easily germinate in that respective area. Now this organism begins to grow in this dead tissue. Now this organism secretes an exotoxin known as tetanospasmin. Now what this tetanospasmin do is it moves retrogradely in a retrograde fashion towards the central nervous system. As you know, the central nervous system consists upon building blocks of axon. This is a neuronal cell which consists of an neuronal nucleus, which has dendrites and axons which move centrally. So this organism moves in a retrograde fashion, in a reverse fashion towards the central nervous system. It acts on the spinal cord, and there it binds to ganglioside receptors. Okay, the endotoxin now moved retrogradely up to the spinal cord. Now what happens here is that it consists upon a lot of neurons. These neurons comparatively look bigger, but they are quite smaller and numerous in number and divided into different categories. But here in the central nervous system, what happens is that it binds to ganglioside receptors here and here. Now this is a presynaptic membrane and this is a postsynaptic membrane. Now by binding to these receptor surfaces, this inhibits transmission of a special substance known as GABA, which is gamma aminobutyric acid. Whenever it is secreted into the synaptic space, it causes inhibition of any movement. So these are also known as the inhibitory neuron. So whenever this toxin binds to this ganglioside receptors, it will prevent release of this GABA. Hence, the neuron will never know when to stop. Similarly, there will be no inhibition, no stopping of movement. So this would result in what? Continuous movement. So when there is continuous movement and this continuous signal being sent to the muscles that contract, the muscle's function is to contract. If a continuous signal is being given to it, the muscle will always be in a state of contraction, which is also known as a state of spasm. So this tetanus toxin causes what? It causes spasm of muscles. If there's spasm of muscles, the muscles that are being affected are the facial muscles. So if that is going on, what will happen is there will be a locked jaw, also known as trismus, because these jaw muscles would be in a contracted position. This feature of patients where they are continuously, their muscle are in spasm, they have a particular type of exaggerated amount of grimace known as rhesus sardonicus. Rhesus sardonicus. And if their back muscles are always in flexion, like their back muscles are always in spasm, so this would result in an arch back, also known as opisthotonus. This is opposite to that of the organism such as Clostridium botulinum, which causes flaccid paralysis. Now, the another remembering feature of this organism is that it has only one antigen. So hence, whenever we give, if it has one antigen, so if we give a vaccine to it, that symptoms would be opposed, that it would no longer be caused. In contrary to that of the tetanus botulinum, which has 8 antigenic properties, so it does not have a vaccine. In laboratory diagnosis, there is no microbiological or serological diagnosis of this organism, but this organism can be, or its spores can be found from the wounded area. And whenever we observe this organism, this has a characteristic appearance of a tennis racket. Treatment to such diseases that we should immediately give all of the suspected cases tetanus immunoglobulin to overcome its toxin effect. The role of antibiotics is very uncertain, but the other thing which we should be mindful of the airway, because in rhesus sardonicus, in where there's locked jaw, we need to maintain a proper airway, eliminate all of the stimuli that will precipitate a spasm, and in order to relax the body from tetanic spasm, we need to give the patient benzodiazepines such as diazepam or brand name including Valium.